we're going to talk to you today about our diversity and inclusion journey so far. We're not claiming to be experts in this at all. We're just on a journey at Grant Thornton, and we thought we'd share with you some of the stuff that's gone really well, the challenges we faced, and what we need to do to keep moving on this and keep driving our agenda. So I'm Jemma. I'm the resourcing manager for the Experience Hire team at Grant Thornton. This is Michelle. She's the resourcing manager for the trainee team, so the graduates and the school leavers. Okay, so where's my clicker? Hang on. So what we're going to cover today is why diversity and inclusion is so important for us at Grant Thornton, as I'm sure it is for all of you. At Grant Thornton, we believe that a vibrant economy is one where businesses and people flourish, and where diversity and inclusion is absolutely embedded in every single thing we do. So we want to talk you through that a little bit. We also want to talk to you about the challenges we faced and how we've addressed these challenges so far, and obviously what we need to do to continue to address many challenges that I'm sure we're all facing. A while ago, probably about a year ago, we had the opportunity to review the biggest challenges facing us in this area, and it enabled us to look at some key areas challenging entry and progression within our firm. We're going to cover today mostly social mobility and gender, which are the two areas that we've really, well, certainly social mobility we've really had some great progression in, and gender we've just started to try and make a difference within our firm. There are obviously other areas of diversity as well, and we are starting as a firm to focus on a few other areas of diversity that 2019 is going to be a big drive for us, so we'll cover those towards the end. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to hand over to Michelle.
So Jemma and I were thinking, how would we try and engage a room this big? I was particularly nervous because I rocked up like, oh, it was fine. Last time I did it, there was about 4 or 5 sessions. We had about 10 people came to ours. It was super chilled. And then I got here and I was like, why is there only one room? And Jemma was like, yeah, it's one room. Everyone's in one room. So, and I'm due to finish on maternity leave on Friday. So please be kind. So we were trying to think about how we'd engage a room. And one of the things we talked about was how actually, what was our kind of message and how have we looked at diversity and inclusion. And we picked a door, and this is to really symbolise how we've approached diversity and inclusion at Grant Thornton. What we've tried to do in everything that we've done is to have a look at really creating a level playing field. So this isn't about prioritising females or having female-only working groups or trying to prioritise students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, but actually what it is about is making sure that every single person who applies to Grant Thornton, whatever their background, experience, gender, ethnicity, can enter our organisation with the same access and they can progress the same. So I think that's kind of the message today, is kind of what we've been trying to do, is make sure we've got fair access. Yep. So I think what we also tried to do at Grant Thornton was start, I guess, with the challenges in mind and start with some of the data. So if I think about social mobility, some of the things that we kind of spotted quite quickly is that we had some very clear and obvious barriers to entry for the kind of student market. So we were going out to careers fairs and meeting brilliant students who were saying to us, I want to apply to you, but I got a 2-2, or I got a B and 2 Cs, and we were going, that's great, we've just spoken to you, you're brilliant, but you can't apply to us, and you're going to apply and you're going to get rejected straight away, and we haven't even considered you. And so that allowed us to do a bit of an analysis around actually what does great look like at our firm. So I won't go into too much detail, but we did a huge amount of research into the academics that people got as they applied and then how they did in the job, and we did not find any correlation between academics, application, and then performance in role and in exams. So that led us to removing academic requirements. So now anybody can apply to us with whatever academic requirements they have. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. We also saw that we had a real focus on work experience and extracurricular activities. They formed a huge part of our application form. And we also targeted a lot of Russell Group universities. So probably anywhere between 70 to 80% of our target universities were Russell Group universities. And a lot of the data shows that those students often have more coaching, more support, and often they have the networks that allow them to go on and get into kind of top professions. So we had a real focus on, we have clearly got some barriers that we need to address. So that was our main starting point, really.
And on the gender side, probably similar to many of you, we found that we're very underrepresented with females at the more senior levels. So 16% of our partners are female, well, this was back in January when we looked at this, which obviously isn't a very high number. So we needed to look at how we were internally progressing our females, but also how, as a resourcing team, which I was leading, how are we going to bring more women into our roles at senior level and all the challenges that come with that. Okay, we're going to start off with social mobility. Yeah. With Michelle.
So this, which should have been an arrow, so apologies, is our journey, I guess, really, in terms of social mobility. So it doesn't capture absolutely everything, but it captures kind of the headlines of what we've done. So in 2013, we removed the academic entry requirements. So our previous requirements were a 2-1, 300 UCAS points, and a minimum of B in GCSE English and Maths. And if you didn't have those, so even if you had like a 2-1 and 280 UCAS points, you were automatically declined at the first SIF. So we wouldn't even consider you, we wouldn't sort of almost talk to you, if you like, you were declined. So that's where we did the big, huge analysis, and we removed the academic entry requirements in favour for a much more flexible approach. We then partnered with a movement called Access Accountancy, which is around, I don't know if there's anybody from the legal profession in the room, but similar to something called Prime, which is around helping students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds get access to our profession. And that's off the back of a huge report that Alan Milburn did from the Social Mobility Commission around the fact that law and accountancy is particularly elitist, and the big barriers that students haven't got the work experience to then progress into an organisation. We moved to potential-based recruitment, and we worked with CAP, who I know are in the room today, to very much look at strengths-based assessment, and that's based on a lot of the research that says often competencies can prevent barriers. And we saw this firsthand. So we had students that maybe were caring for elderly parents or from kind of a quite challenging background, and they didn't have that opportunity to gain lots of work experience or go and do fantastic charity partnerships abroad. So we wanted to look for potential, not based on kind of what someone has done. We talked about work experience and extracurricular earlier, but we have removed the need for work experience and extracurricular from our application form to much more around purpose and their commitment to our organisation. So that's, again, trying to remove those barriers. And some of you may be aware of the Bridge Group. So the Bridge Group are a charity who support organisations looking at social mobility. So we partnered with the Bridge Group for them to do a huge piece of analysis for us to look at all of our candidates and to have a look if there was any adverse impact. So the changes that we made, did we feel that anybody was negatively impacted? And really proud to say that our current process has no adverse impact on students from kind of lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And then finally, a big focus recently over the last couple of years has been focusing on moving to kind of a better balance of non-Russell Group and Russell Group universities, again, to make sure we're leveling that playing field and we're providing access and opportunity. And then kind of threaded throughout that, we've had a big focus on coaching. So we have regular coaching in communities throughout our process, just to make sure that those that are applying get access to mentors, buddies, and they get the opportunity for support. So they're kind of our headlines, really. So the impact, I feel like this slide's a bit like, oh, look how brilliant we are, so I'm going to try and speed through it a little bit. But there, I guess we've just been awarded some industry awards that we're super proud of for the work that we've done in this space. So we are one of 12 organisations in the UK who have social mobility business compact status, so that's for the work that we're doing in social mobility. We've recently been ranked number 1 and number 2 in the Social Mobility Index, and very recently we were named Organisation of the Year at the Social Mobility Awards. We awarded the Queen Awards in 2018, and this is for our focus on social mobility and really promoting opportunity. So they're kind of some of our industry benchmarks, if you like. And then I've talked about our current process, so I'll skip through that. We've talked a little bit about access accountancy, so that's around providing work experience. So we provide about 80 students with work experience from kind of lower socioeconomic backgrounds to try and get them access to our profession. And this year, we're proud that 73% of our trainees would have been the first generation in their family to go to university, and 74% attended a state school, which for our industry in accountancy is more on the kind of unusual side. And again, I've sort of talked about this, but we've actually seen when we've compared those that have joined us with lower academics and those with higher academics, we're actually seeing really comparable performance both in exams and in the job, which is just further kind of giving us that encouragement to continue. And last year, so we're just reviewing the data for this intake, last year 20% of our intake wouldn't have been able to join us because of our previous requirements, so they wouldn't have ever been able to join our firm, and they're doing well so far.
Okay, so as you could see from what Michelle was just sharing with you, we've been working on social mobility for quite a few years, and we're pretty good at that. So what we needed to do is take some of the learnings we'd learnt with the social mobility side of things and look at some other diversity strands. And with the gender pay gap report coming out in, was it January, we realised we needed to do something pretty urgently and actually get moving on this. So I've taken the lead in D&I from a resourcing perspective, so the people we bring into the firm. We've actually got a D&I team who are looking at sort of the more internal processes and how we support diversity from within, but obviously there's a big overlap. Our approach to gender, again, there is an arrow there, but unfortunately the white background, you can't see that. So our approach to gender equality has been since January, so it's only been 9 months or so. We've had some quick wins. We've still got an awful lot to do, so please don't think that I'm sort of preaching to you knowing everything about this, because I certainly don't. In January, we decided we needed an inclusion strategy for resourcing, so we created an inclusion strategy that was aligned to the inclusion strategy that we have as our firm, so that we're working as one as much as possible. We based this on a few pillars. Basically, the aim of it was to look at creating a more diverse pool of talent to bring into our firm and making sure that we're removing those barriers for women to actually join our process, to be part of our process, and then organically be offered those roles at the end of the day. On this timeline, you can see in February we created a flexible working statement. So none of our jobs were advertised with any flexibility before this point. We wrote a flexible working statement, and we put that on every single job. So 100% of our jobs now have a flexible working statement on them. So we went from 0 to 100% pretty quickly, and it was something that was actually quite easy to do. We also, as part of that process, in our briefing side of things, when we're talking to hiring managers about their roles, we're actually coaching them and helping them understand what flexible working means and how that's going to help their business and how that's going to support their team and the motivation in their team and you know, at the end of the day, the results of their team. So we're doing an awful lot of coaching with our hiring managers, with our stakeholders to think in a more flexible manner. And something that's really stood out for me over the last 9 months is if we've achieved anything, we have achieved people talking more about flexible working. And this becomes bigger than the whole gender piece, obviously, because flexible working is not just for women, and that's really important. But our firm is now really talking about flexible working, and that's from a lot of the work we've been doing with our stakeholders in the business and helping them understand how to manage that flexible workforce. We've also partnered with TimeWise. I don't know whether any of you work with TimeWise, but they're a flexible job board. There's a few out there, but we had a good relationship with TimeWise, and we advertise a lot of our jobs on their site, and we're getting a good lot of CVs through actually from TimeWise, and we're hoping to make a few placements in the forthcoming months. Something we did that we found really interesting is we did an interviewer audit. So we looked at all the interviewers we had in our business. So there's 5,000 people in Grant Thornton, UK. We basically pulled together everyone who does interviews, and we coded them on gender, very basically. And the aim was to see where we were putting out non-diverse interview panels. We had some feedback from a candidate that said, I had 5 interviews with you and I didn't meet a single woman, which was pretty shocking. So we decided to take action pretty quickly on that, and we audited all of our interviewers, and we red flagged all of those areas that had no or very few females in that area. We obviously let these teams know, and as part of that, as our team, so the resourcing team is providing interview training to upskill some more people in those areas to make sure that we're providing a gender-balanced interview, which is really important. And obviously, in time, we need to make sure that it's a completely diverse interview panel as well. So we'll be looking at taking that further. We've changed our career site quite a lot. We've published information on our career site about flexible and agile working. so that candidates and applicants can see before they even apply what our stance on flexible and agile working is. We've also put our parental policies on there as well, so that before they even walk in the door, applicants can see that how we might support future or current parents. What else can I tell you? A key thing that we're looking at doing, that we're in the process of doing, and should come out in the next month or so, is we've changed our job ads. I'm sure many of you have heard the sort of the stat that flies around these sorts of things where 100% men will apply for a job if they tick 60% of the boxes, whereas women will only apply for the job if they tick 100% of the requirements. So part of our look at our job ads is to challenge that. What we've actually done is we've put a really clear statement in there that says you do not have to tick all of these boxes. If you feel you can add value in any one of these areas, please get in touch, please talk to us and let us know, and hopefully that will open the door to more women who are thinking they have to tick every single box. We've also taken a lot of any biased language out, and we've just generally made our job adverts more inclusive as a whole. Case studies are great, to share case studies of women at senior level, women in business, people working in a flexible manner, whether they're male or female. Just getting those case studies out internally and externally. So we've been interviewing people, sharing it on our intranet site, getting it out on LinkedIn, so people within our business can actually see that it's okay to work in a flexible manner and that we really, really support it. So that has been key to getting stakeholder buy-in from your senior partners down to your associate level, people who think it's only for the senior people. It's not. Everyone can do it. What else? We've recently run a pilot with women returners. I'm sure some of you have heard of women returners in Scotland, where we looked to take on 1 or 2 returners in Scotland. Our adverts were quite specific. We didn't think we'd probably get anyone because it's quite a small market. It was a tax manager and an audit people we were looking for. But we've ended up hiring on a 4-month returnship 2 women who, one of them into a tax manager role that we've been trying to fill for 2 years. She hasn't worked in tax for 10 years. She's been running her own business, her own nursery. And she came along to this and she blew away our interviewers. Her knowledge of tax as a business owner was amazing. And obviously she's qualified in tax as well. So they've taken her on, which is an amazing reaction for us to pull that off. Hopefully she's going to really enjoy herself with us. She starts in a couple of weeks. And the other lady we've brought on is in audit. Again, a qualified auditor who's worked at 2 of our biggest competitors, hasn't worked for 5 years. So it just feels like that's a really great thing to do, but also bringing these women who are obviously highly skilled back into our business. They'll do a 4-month secondment, or whatever you want to call it, contract, and if things go well, they can stay, if both parties agree. So I'm looking to roll that out across the business outside of Scotland as well, if that goes well, and take lessons learned from what we're doing in Scotland at the moment. So there's an awful lot of things we've done over the last 9-10 months that have kind of really moved us forward in the gender side of things, but also flexible working is a bigger picture piece. But that's where we're up to so far, with an awful lot still to do in 2019. Moving on to the next slide, the impact. I've talked about a bit of this, so I can fly over this a bit, but we are starting to be seen as a more flexible employer in the market. I'm getting much more interest on LinkedIn. We've got candidates who are coming to us specifically because they've seen what we're doing with flexible working, what we're trying to do in the D&I space. So an example of that is actually, we hired a senior manager in Manchester recently, and she actually turned down a much higher offer from one of our key competitors because they wouldn't offer the level of flexibility that she wanted. So she came to us because she'd seen on our website that we were trying to do this flexible working thing. And she's now joined us at senior manager level, which is great. Our intake of people onto a flexible working contract has doubled this year compared to last year. It's still not big enough. It's still not big enough. We still don't have enough people on a flexible working contract, but it's doubled, so that's a good start. We do have a lot of people who work flexibly or in an agile manner who aren't on a contract, so that's fine, and those people are obviously harder to measure. But actually, those that are working on a flexible contract has doubled. So that's real progress from an internal perspective, that people are starting to listen internally. I've said this already, internal stakeholders are much more open and aware to flexible working, which is probably one of the the biggest things you have to do when you're trying to drive this, I found. And we've made some amazing flexible female hires since we've started this drive. Another couple of examples, we have a senior manager in Scotland whose husband works on the oil rigs. He does 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. So she's got a flexible contract that we've agreed with her where when he's on the rigs, she works half days so she can support their daughter. And when he's back, she works full days so he can support the daughter, and the family unit works in that way. So she's on a complete flexible contract. We've got an AM, an assistant manager in London we've given her a home-based contract, and it's cut her commute by 3 hours every single day. So she's obviously pretty happy about that. And final example is a tax manager in Manchester here, who's had a 10-year career gap, and she's been running her own craft business. We've taken her on. She's currently 3 days a week, so she can close down her craft business and start to get used to being in the corporate world again. And then as time goes on, she'll go up to 4 days, and if she wants to, potentially go up to 5 days in time. So some great examples of some flexibility there. Okay, and what's next? So in the gender space, what's next is go live with our job adverts and monitor our response to see if we feel like we've hit the mark with this, and if not, have another look at them. Continue to coach and educate our internal stakeholders, which is constant. It needs to be constant. Everyone new coming in has to be, part of this and really believing in diversity and inclusion as a whole. Case studies, I've already said, are massively important to help your cause. I want to roll out the returnship program across the firm in other pockets. We're dotted all over the country, so I feel like we can do that in other areas. And use our learnings and methods from social mobility and from the gender stuff we're doing to drive work in our other key D&I strands, which we've just, as a firm, we've just announced that we're going to be driving disability, mental health, ethnicity, LGBT+, and the 2 that we've been talking about today. So there will be 6 strands moving forward. So we want to take the drives that we've been working on here and really push in those areas as well. But there's a lot to do. Okay. What's next for us as a whole? So I've very briefly talked about those other strands. Disability, we're part of the Business Disability Forum. We had some amazing training from them as a team, the resourcing and the BP team. I'd recommend it to anybody. It's great. I feel like the team now know how to manage the process and how to facilitate and all about reasonable adjustments. So we'll be moving that forward. We're also going for our Disability Confident Level 1. Level 2. LGBT+, I'm sure many of you are doing this already, working with Stonewall, advertising on Stonewall to really try and make our ads more inclusive as a whole. We're also creating a transitioning at work policy. Wellness, mental health and wellness, we've created a wellness strategy across the firm. We've got 60 wellbeing champions across the firm who've been trained up and there to support our people. And ethnicity, we are doing a BAME pay gap report, and then we will create an agenda and a strategy from there as to how we get better in that area. Okay. Back to Michelle.
So I think just to bring us to a close, I think what we've tried to do there is just hopefully summarise some of the key things that we've done in the diversity and inclusion space. And I think what we'd want to just leave you with is I guess, what access have you got to your organisation? So if you were to kind of go home this evening and have a reflect, what's the access like, and what's the access like once you're in the organisation? So is it easy to progress? Is it easy to do well throughout? So we just kind of encourage you to kind of reflect on that thinking if you can. And then I think we've got an opportunity for any questions, but I'm conscious I think we might be on time or over.
Just a tiny bit over.